this week unveiled their prototype for a completely autonomous car, one without a steering wheel, gas pedals, or brake pedals, completely separating the passengers from control of the vehicle. But a common concern about autonomous vehicles is, what if something goes wrong? This scenario is something that has even made its way into pop culture on TV shows like HBO's Silicon Valley, which perfectly captures it in comedic fashion.
Route guidance calibrated. Distance to destination 4.6 miles. Buckle up, please. Destination override. New destination 1 Gregory Drive, Air Along.
No, stop. Let me out. That's not good.
Joining us from Austin, Texas is Kara Kockelman, Professor of Transportation Engineering at the University of Texas Austin's Cockrell School of Engineering. She is the co-author of Preparing a Nation for Autonomous Vehicles: Opportunities, Barriers, and Recommendations. And joining us from Buffalo, New York is automotive expert Lauren Fix, author of 3 award-winning automotive books and the national automotive correspondent for Time Warner Cable. Thanks to both of you for being here. So, Google released a video showing how their new cars detect and respond to the world around them using a system of lasers and cameras that see 600 feet in every direction. But a recent poll found that nearly 80% of U.S. adults worry about equipment failures and glitches in driverless cars. Kara, you know, highways are pretty predictable, right? But city streets, not so much. You've got kids and animals and potholes and construction, you name it. Will the sensors and the computers in these vehicles reliably be able to read and react to every situation that could present itself?
Well, humans don't reliably react to all sorts of situations, so no, I don't think they can guess at somebody darting out between 2 parked cars. It requires Superman, I think, but they will be able to do better than most of us. I mean, many people are relying on them already to parallel park and back up. We're seeing some auto chauffeuring options, and we are seeing autonomous vehicles in many settings, maybe not on your local street, but they are doing quite well in practice.
So would you say that there's no scenario where a driver could take over and better correct than the car is going to do on its own?
No, there are some really odd scenarios that they come up with. So you've got, 2 victims, and you have to choose who's the, less costly to hit, and that is tough for a computer with computer vision. That does take some smarts, but sometimes it really is just luck if the driver manages to choose the better of the 2 targets. So a lot of times you're going to hit something, and it really depends on how lucky you get that day and how alert you are. Many drivers, of course, aren't paying attention at all, and that's what causes the crash in the first place.
So, Kara, several states currently allow self-driving cars, but all require that a driver is behind the wheel in case of emergency. And even Google is acknowledging that in emergency situations, someone who's not paying attention, who's reading or daydreaming, can't take control quick enough to avoid an accident. So how is the new car, without any input from the driver, going to be able to handle an emergency?
Well, those drivers on board and behind the wheel don't really necessarily mean that those DMVs are expecting a quick handoff. They're expecting, if it's a snowstorm, or there's a parade in front of you, something very out of the ordinary, reflective ice on the road, that those are times where, yes, a driver needs to be present, a driver needs to take over, or a tire blowout. So those are the kinds of settings I think they're really thinking of, not a quick handoff, here, you take over, I can't figure this out, and you're about to die. That's not the kind of setting we're going to see.
So, Lauren, Google's earlier generation of self-driving cars have logged over 700,000 miles. They've had no accidents that were the fault of the self-driving mechanism. But, the inevitable is going to happen eventually. And at that point, who's going to be liable?
That's going to be a very interesting case. One of the things you think about, this is great. I won't have to do anything. I can get in the car, give it directions. There's no steering wheel, no pedals. I won't have to do anything. And that's, unfortunately, the consumers tended to be a hands-off type situation. Unfortunately, when you're talking about liability in this case, if there's an accident and there's no steering wheel and there's no pedals, that's when you're going to run into a problem where there's no way for a human to intervene and possibly or potentially avoid an accident. There are times where a computer can process a decision better, but we think and sometimes we can make decisions based on our experiences. And the problem is, whose fault is it? So the car was autonomous, there was an accident, maybe somebody hit them or you hit someone. This is where insurance companies are going to get involved, and it's going to be expensive for those people that own those cars. And I'm very concerned about cars that don't have steering wheels and pedals like these Google cars, because you know when you give consumers an inch, they take a yard. And how that will work is, I need to get the dog to the vet, but I have to go to work. You put the dog in the car, you set the directions. If you think that won't happen, you know someone will do that. I don't want to send the kids to my ex. I don't want to see the guy. I'm going to put it in the car and send him. We wouldn't do it, but people do things like that. And these are problems that cars can't process that. And again, if the weather gets bad or there's an accident, which vehicle is going to hit? The more expensive Mercedes or the least expensive Mitsubishi? And it's going to go for the more expensive car, but it's not going to know it based on brand. And this is a problem when there is accidents, and this is what Kara was talking about, that computers can't make those decisions. We want to obviously avoid that accident at all costs. So I think liability-wise, I think we're opening up a very expensive case for those people who choose to purchase autonomous cars, especially initially.
So, Kara, polling has also found that more than half of the respondents were really worried about driverless cars being hacked because they're going to be completely operated by a computer. I know that cars already contain a lot of computers that handle navigation, and you can have the engine shut down remotely, have the doors unlocked remotely. But this whole idea of being hacked, it sounds kind of scary. Is that a fear that's being overblown, or is that a legitimate concern?
Well, I do think that's being overblown a bit because of the heavy computerization that we're already seeing with relatively little hacking. And it's quite easy to disable a conventional vehicle or cause problems, after a mile of driving. So, if you get under the hood of a conventional vehicle, you can probably do a lot more harm far more quickly, and of course with far less sophistication than getting into one of these vehicles and trying to get it to behave a certain way. The Google car, I should say, is not connected to other vehicles, which is something that the federal government is also pursuing. And the autonomy means independent, so there's not really an opportunity for others to derail it. They can spoof the location, and the GPS will be, in that sense, potentially disabled, but they have plenty of redundancy on them. They know how that goes. And I think we'll just be firewalling the code, the program system code that will eventually connect these vehicles to one another so that they can warn each other of things, and the code that allows the vehicle to be self-driving.
So, Lauren, politics wiggles its way into everything. I'm sure it'll be part of the development and the adoption of these new cars. If these cars could possibly replace taxis, I would think that drivers' unions would fight back. I mean, not to mention the anti-electric car lobby that already exists, as well as police unions whose departments stand to lose an enormous source of revenue from traffic tickets. I know that you've even weighed in on how drivers' ed industry could be impacted. Talk a little about the politics of this.
Well, there's a lot of politics. When you think about the auto industry and where a lot of this funding comes from, the auto industry funds not just local politicians, but a lot of local businesses. And the tickets that are obtained, that all goes to pay for a lot of little local towns. But when you're talking about the driver's ed portion of it, when you went to driver's ed, we use and practice driving every day. All of us that own vehicles, every day you learn the skills of keeping your hands at 3 and 9, keeping your vision up, not being distracted. When you become a part of an autonomous car, it's easy to get lazy, and those skills are not being honed and practiced. And unfortunately, when these people do get behind regular conventional vehicles, they're not going to be as sharp in their skills as they used to be. In addition, that means potentially less people being hired, less teachers teaching. That impacts not just AAA, but think about the taxi cab business, and so many other industries are going to be impacted by this. And I think that there's a lot. It starts to blossom when you start looking at some of the fringe people that are going to impact. So if it does affect unemployment, politicians are going to be totally against it, because that's the last thing they need is higher unemployment.
All right, Professor Kara Koppelman and Lauren Fix, thank you both so much for coming on.